Hello viewers, this is Ranjana ma'am, back after a long time, and you are watching, yes, your channel, not mine. Okay, so this time again it is for my Icse students. I've been getting quite a few requests. Which chapter? A Face in the Dark. Very short story, but at the same time a bit eerie, isn't it? So let's start. Yeah, and as I always do, I need to remind you, have you subscribed to my channel up till now? Because I find most of my viewers, they are non-subscribers. In comparison to my subscribers, non-subscribers are more. So if you are watching my channel, you are welcome. Please do subscribe to my channel. It will boost me to carry on with the work. And those who have already subscribed, if you want, you can share it among your friends and watch the video till the end. And if you have liked it, what do I say? Don't forget to press the like button. Okay, so without wasting any more time, exams are coming. So let's start with it. A Face in the Dark, written by one of the famous Anglo-Indian novelists, Ruskin Bond. A Face in the Dark. So as I always say, first let us go back and read the box. So what is the story about? This, in a nutshell, we can say, Mr. Oliver, a teacher, is on his way back to school late one night when he meets a strange young boy. The encounter fills him with terror and he takes to his heels. Takes to his heels is a phrase. It means ran very fast, only to discover that there is no escape for him. Ruskin Bond makes skillful use of all the elements of a horror story: fear, surprise, suspense, and mystery to explore humanity's collective fascination with the dark. So why do I read the box? There is a reason. Many times you are asked some questions that may have the answer in the box, like what are the elements of a horror story that Ruskin Bond uses. So you get your answer here. Ruskin Bond makes skillful use of all the elements of a horror story, like fear, surprise, suspense, and mystery. So these are the elements he uses, and these are the elements you will find in a horror story. So now let's get to the story. A Face in the Dark. Mr. Oliver, an Anglo-Indian teacher, was returning to his school late one night on the outskirts of the hill station of Simla. So where is the school? The school is not in the middle of the town Simla. It is on the outskirts or on the borders of Simla. And what was he doing? He was returning to the school. So this is a residential school, and he had gone for a walk in the evening, and then he was returning back to his school at night. From before Kipling's time, the school had been run on English public school lines. So Kipling is Rudyard Kipling. I'm sure you must have heard, if not read, you must have heard and seen the Jungle Book, Mowgli. So we have na Jungle. So the boys, most of them from wealthy Indian families, wore blazers, caps, and ties. Yeah, in those days. Nowadays, though, all the 99% English medium schools, they have their blazers. But in those days, blazers meant very nice public school, very affluent public school with children coming from affluent families. So what did they wear? Blazers, caps, and ties. This was as if to keep at par with the schools abroad in the West. So that is why, just see what Life magazine, a magazine published abroad, in a feature on India. So Life magazine had an article on India, had once called it. It means the school to which Mr. Oliver belongs, the school where he teaches. This school was called the Eton of the East. Eton is a very famous school. Some people can pronounce it Eton of the East. Mr. Oliver had been teaching in the school for several years. So this is the introduction. The Simla Bazaar with its cinemas and restaurants was about 3 miles from the school. Yeah, I told you the school is on the borders or the boundaries of the town, and the bazaar and the cinemas, the restaurants, they are always in the center. So 3 miles. And Mr. Oliver, a bachelor, usually strolled into the town in the evening, returning after dark. So why did he go there? Actually, he needed some company. He needed to see people, talk to them, or at least he needed to be in the din and bustle. Most probably he felt lonely. And this was a way to interact with people and at least watch people. That would make him feel better, and then he would go back to his school. Returning after dark, when he would take a shortcut to the pine forest. When there was a strong wind, the pine trees made sad, eerie sounds. Actually, the pine trees did not make the sound. When the wind passed through the pine trees, it seemed as if the trees are making this sound. It was because the winds passed through the pine trees. The wind only made such a type of mysterious sound. So that kept most people to the main road. So most people preferred to take the long cut via the main road. They would prefer to walk all the way through the main road instead of taking the shortcut. Why? Because of the sound made by the pine trees, or rather made by the wind when there was a strong one. But Mr. Oliver was not a nervous or imaginative man. He carried a torch, and in its gleam, the batteries were running down. Moved fitfully down the narrow forest path. So with the help of the torch, he would be moving on his way through the pine forest. Why? Because he was not a nervous person. So these sounds had no effect on him. He did not get frightened. Whereas most people, they preferred the longer route than this shortcut. When its flickering light, not steady, light, fell in the figure of a boy who was sitting alone on a rock, Mr. Oliver stopped. So Mr. Oliver, with the help of the torch, he finds his way through the pine forest to his school. So today what happened, as he was, with the aid of the torch, as he was moving towards his school, suddenly the light fell on the figure of a boy. And what was this boy doing? He was sitting alone on a rock. So Mr. Oliver stopped. Why? Because what is this boy doing here? Boys were not supposed to be out after dark. So yes, there is a school rule. Boys should be within the campus, inside their rooms rather, before dark. So what is he doing here all to himself? That means he has broken the school rule. "What are you doing out here, boy?" asked Mr. Oliver sharply, moving closer so that he could recognize the miscreant. So he goes close to the boy to see who's this fellow. Miscreant, why? Because he has dared to break the school rule. The school rule is that you should not be out after dark, and he has dared to break this rule. So he wants to identify this culprit. But even as he approached the boy, Mr. Oliver sensed that something was wrong. Yes, something fishy. Why? The boy appeared to be crying. His head hung down. He held his face in his hands and his body shook convulsively. So most probably like this, he hid his face and then his body was shaking. It was a strange, soundless weeping. So though he is weeping, but no sound, it cannot be heard. Only the movement of his back gives the idea that he is crying. And Mr. Oliver felt distinctly uneasy. Why is he crying? So he feels uncomfortable. "Well, what's the matter?" he cried. So earlier he had asked sharply. Why? Because he was angry. But now when he sees that the boy is crying, he feels something must be wrong. So he is concerned. his anger giving way to concern. "What are you crying for?" No answer came from the boy. The boy would not answer or look up. His body continued to be racked with silent sobbing. "Come on, boy, you shouldn't be here out at this hour. Tell me the trouble, look up." So he's trying to help, offer a helping hand. And just see now what happened. The boy looked up. So he raises his face. He was sitting, he raises his face, and what does Mr. Oliver see? Suppose you were to find that I had no eyes, no nose, no mouth, and nothing. So how would you feel? You would be horrified. Same thing happened to Mr. Oliver. He took his hands from his face and looked up at his teacher. The light from Mr. Oliver's torch fell on the boy's face. If you could call it a face. Why is it said if you could call it a face? It had no eyes, ears, nose, or mouth. It was just a round, smooth head with a school cap on top of it. So how could Mr. Oliver identify that the boy belonged to his school? Because he had the cap. The school cap was on his head. And that's where the story should end. But for Mr. Oliver, it did not end there. Yeah, for us it would have ended. Honestly, see, if I saw a face like that, I would have fainted. But Mr. Oliver, as we have been told by the author, was not an imaginative or a nervous person. So what did he do? The torch fell, at the most the torch fell from his trembling hand. He turned and scrambled down the path, running blindly through the trees and calling for help. So he manages to leave that place and run. He's running through the pine forest. Help, help, help. He was still running towards the school buildings when he saw a lantern swinging in the middle of the path. Someone is coming with a lantern, obviously the watchman. Mr. Oliver stumbled up to the watchman, gasping for breath. He's panting. "What is it, Sahib?" asked the watchman. "Has there been an accident?" "Why are you running?" "I saw something horrible. A boy weeping in the forest. He had no face." Can you understand how horrified Mr. Oliver must be? And he is reporting it to the watchman. "No face, Sahib?" So the watchman says, "Sahib, did you say no face? No eyes, nose, mouth, nothing." "Do you mean it was like this, Sahib?" asked the watchman. And what does he do? Raise the lamp to his own face. And in the light of the lamp, what does Mr. Oliver see? The watchman had no eyes, ears, no features at all, not even an eyebrow. And that's when the wind blew the lamp out. Oh my God. Can you imagine? The torch has already fallen there where the boy was. And now the little light that came from the lamp of the watchman, that also gone. So it's pitch dark and the story ends here. And Ruskin Bond leaves it for you to imagine what happened. So the story ends abruptly. So we can make conjectures as to what happened. He could have died of a heart failure, or he might have become unconscious and later he woke up to find himself, or he regained consciousness to find himself in a nursing home. So it's for you to guess. So Ruskin Bond stories, they are always very interesting. Normally they relate to the cherry tree or a tunnel. Many of his stories deal with tunnel, but this is the one where I find no tunnel, neither the cherry tree, but a horror story just in 2 pages. So this is the work of a master writer. In just 2 pages, he manages to rouse our interest and keep it till the end. And once the story ends also, now we keep on thinking what really happened after this. You know, the first time I read this, it was in one of the CBSC workbook sample papers. So it came as a comprehension. So when I read it, I felt I would like to read the whole story because I thought that this story has something more, because I felt that it was an abrupt ending. But many times after that, wherever I read, I found the same ending. So then I realized, no, it's like that only. The story ends here. The author leaves us to guess or make our own deductions. So how did you like the story? So what are the things you should keep in mind when you are preparing for your stories are appropriateness of the title, A Face in the Dark. Face in the Dark is very appropriate. Why? Because here the face in the dark means the face, or rather no face, or rather no features. The face is there means the surface, or should smooth surface is there, but no features. And in the dark, obviously. And you can get it, as I just now, before I started, I said what are the elements that Ruskin Bond uses in his horror story, or the elements of horror that you find in Ruskin Bond's story of Face in the Dark. And see, you will have to study, as I always say, study it very well, though it's 2 pages, and yet quite a few facts are here, like where did Mr. Oliver teach, or who was Mr. Oliver, and to what has this school been compared, in which magazine, and then how far was the Simla Bazaar and the restaurant from the school. Why did Mr. Oliver go there? And why did people prefer to take the longer route? So small questions. And remember, many of you have asked me to tell you how to write answers. Yes, I will make a separate video on it once I finish the chapters, but at the same time, I keep on telling you in all my videos, what you are supposed to do is to write concise answers. In your school, I don't know what they tell you. Some teachers, they don't come from the Icse background, so they don't know the right rules. For Icse, you don't need to write lengthy answers. I keep on stressing this fact. If you watch any of the workbook of Xavier Pinto had most probably been at one time the chairman or the head of the Icse board. So if you see, he will be the perfect person for your guidance. And if you see any of the workbooks, in many of them the samples are given as to how much you should write for a 3 marks question, or for a 4 marks, or when it is 1 mark. So don't just go on wasting your time. Write to the point answers and underline the keywords. I hope you understand what is meant by a keyword. Like suppose, who was Mr. Oliver? So if I say Mr. Oliver was an Anglo-Indian teacher in a residential school in Shimla. So Anglo-Indian teacher, or you can underline only teacher. He was a teacher. Or where did he stay, or what was the name of the place? So it was Simla. So underline Simla. Simla is the keyword. I'm just giving you an example. So keyword means the most important word in the sentence. Why should you underline it? See, when you are preparing for your boards in your school, some schools they insist that you underline this keywords, and some schools don't. But I'm telling you one thing. Suppose when the board examiner is correcting, he has so many, or she has so many papers to correct. So if you underline the keyword, it becomes easier for the person to find out the answer, to pinpoint the answer. Oh, he's given me the answer, or she's given me the answer. So it makes his job easier, and you get your marks very easily. He doesn't need to read everything. Don't think they read each and every line, but yes, grammatically correct sentences, of course. But that because you are helping, you as if come in the favor of the examiner. So keep this in mind and always underline the keywords. And once I finish, I will show you, I will dictate 1 or 2 answer extracts to show how to write the answer, so that you get a fair idea as to how much you should write. So don't write too much. No one wants to read your lengthy answers. That is not for ICSE. 4 marks question should not be more than this. 1 marks. because you are given part marking also. Suppose there are 3 subdivisions and 3 marks, and there are 3 questions also in that one, like who, when, where. So in each suppose in the question there are 3 subdivisions, each subdivision you will change and make a separate paragraph, even if the previous answer is just 1 line. That is how you are showing that you have answered all the 3 parts. Okay, so keep this in mind. So I think you don't need to ask me questions in this one, but still, if you feel, you are free to ask. So put your question in the comment section. And as you have seen, I try to do my best. I answer as whenever I see, I answer very promptly. So you can do that always. And have a nice time. And for the time being, let me bid you goodbye.